There's only two possible outcomes. Either they keep raising rates and crash the entire economy worse than we saw in the Depression of the 1930s.
Hey guys, welcome back to Library of Wealth. Today we have Bitcoin maximalist Max Keiser giving us an update on how the Fed money printing is affecting inflation and why the recent crash in the crypto market happened. With cryptocurrency going through a difficult time, Bitcoin has also lost 30% of its value just this year. Investors and crypto analysts say that whenever there's a sell-off, to be aware of any projections that indicate a lower price point of the prevailing downtrend. Keiser has been warning people that fiat currencies would collapse and why Bitcoin is a significantly better store of value. The pricing on Wall Street continues to erode trust with investors, and we're starting to see the negative effects of that now. Let's get into the interview with Max Keiser as he gives his prediction on the market collapse and how this will affect Bitcoin in the next few months. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content we do here on this channel. Let's get right into the video.
Once the inflation starts to become a problem that's not going away, that's not transitory, that the excuses made by government and policymakers will get more and more outlandish, more convoluted, more bizarre. And so that's what we're seeing now. So this is predictable. This happens, this is historically what happens. For the past 10 years, there's been the so-called widowmaker trade, where people were trying to sell the bond market or short the bond market because of the inflation that was building. But that was a widowmaker trade. It wasn't working for 10 years, really 15 years, because the Federal Reserve changed their mandate. They became the activist Fed, and so they became the buyer of first order for all the junk in the system, and they bloated their balance sheet. So they deferred the day of reckoning. So we've had now, instead of a normal business cycle in America, which would happen every generation, we've now had 2 generations or 2.5 generations without a correction or a recession to purge the malinvestment out of the system. And so that made the system incredibly fragile. And now that we're at that day of reckoning, it's going to be devastating. So the tools that the central bank has at their disposal are very blunt objects, and there's no room for nuance, really. There's only 2 possible outcomes. Either they keep raising rates and crash the entire economy worse than we saw in the Depression of the 1930s, or they're going to reverse course and engage in another round of money printing, and that would imply hyperinflation. Even Jack Dorsey saw the hyperinflation writing on the wall 6 months ago.
Keiser goes on to say that anytime a collapse happens, investors' timelines get distorted. During periods of extreme volatility, the price of cryptocurrency can skyrocket and crash within just a few months. The recent international conflicts have caused global markets to remain volatile, and uncertainty has followed close behind. Keiser believes we are on the verge of a total financial collapse.
At some point, the Fed will choke and they'll go back to massive money printing, and then the inflation will get really nasty. So then that's when you have gas at $10 a gallon. That's when you have food doubling and tripling again in price. That's when you have housing taking another huge leap higher. And so that's going to be the end of the post-war period of what some would call the American Empire. So it lasted from 1940s to 2022, 2023. That was the American Empire. That was the period. So that's it. You know, a lot of people going back to World War II, they didn't believe what was happening in Germany, and they didn't leave, and they regretted not leaving. A lot of people did leave, some famous people like Einstein and others. I think in the United States, you have to understand that we're going into a third world war. It's a continuation of the second, which is a continuation of the First World War. A lot of the same political forces are once again coming together for a war. And if you're caught in the crosshairs of that, you're going to get killed.
I just saw a chart of the parabolic surge in the number of people in our legislative branch of the United States who are over 70. So these guys have set in motion the decline in this of our empire with the introduction of 50 years ago, the US dollar is all fiat. And thus all the stuff that followed through, the hollowing out of the US economy that was necessary in order to maintain their power for a temporary 50-year period. And you see despair, you see homeless camps across California, which is like one of the largest economies in the world, allegedly.
Going back to what we said at the beginning about inflation, the mainstream media was warning about deflation for years, and the mainstream media didn't think all that money printing would have any consequences. And the inflation genie's out of the bottle. They said it was transitory. And all as a chorus, they've been pushing pro-Wall Street propaganda, and we saw all the propaganda pushed on behalf of the mRNA stuff, that's turned out to be massive psyops. And so now you've got the same machinery in place all in lockstep without a single dissenting voice in American mainstream media pushing the same talking points concerning El Salvador. And well, one phrase in particular stands out from what you just read, and that would be dismantling democracy. So the reason this is patently false and demonstrably false is that the president of El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, and in so doing gave 7 million Salvadorans the right to unconfiscatable, uncensorable wealth and property. Now, this is decentralization, democracy. Okay, this is the complete opposite of the claim of dismantling this democracy. The failure with journalism that we talked about earlier is that they go in there with a cooked story already and then bend the facts to go with the narrative. And you see that on Wall Street now, and part of the problems on Wall Street is that the markets have been subjected to this form of manipulation where big banks like Goldman Sachs, they want the bond market to be a certain price, so they start printing trades at that price and then fill in the orders to support their preconceived notion of what the price should be. So it's the opposite of price discovery, where the price is the sum total of all the buyers and sellers in the market, and you have the current price. That doesn't exist anymore in any market in the world. All markets everywhere are the opposite. The price is determined first based on a narrative, and then trades are filled in afterward to justify that price. We've now entered a new era where prices for stuff are not going to be determined by this fraud on Wall Street, but by the people who produce the stuff. The commodity producers have now taken over in pricing stuff. And that's why suddenly stuff costs more, because for decades, the price of stuff was hidden by derivatives, by Wall Street, by financialization, and all the risk was shuffled around and it was dumped in places where it was never talked about. But now that era is over, and we have a new era where the price of stuff is determined outside of America. It's determined where they produce the stuff, the commodities. Bitcoin is a mirror that exposes people in a way. If you're a bad person, it exposes you to be a worse person. If you're a good person, it tends to show you in even a better light. Michael Saylor was an unknown CEO, and Bitcoin made him into a Bitcoin legend. The founder of the BSV project was already on shaky grounds in terms of mental stability, and Bitcoin turned him into a full-fledged psychopath, right? So that's the power of Bitcoin. It's a force multiplier. So it's revealing the fact that the press in America is sadly in a sad state where the truth is seen as the enemy of the state.
Wall Street and Silicon Valley are now doing what the early Bitcoin investors were doing in 2017. With 380% collapses so far in Bitcoin, the next few months will determine how it will bounce back. In the meantime, some experts predict an $8,000 bottom price for Bitcoin soon, seeing a recent 70% downturn since its $30,000 price point in June. If their forecast comes true, it would inflict further pain on Bitcoin and the broader cryptocurrency market, which has seen around $500 billion wiped off its value in the past month. Most agree that Bitcoin will survive this cycle, but this is eerily similar to the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s. While most major cryptos are spending much of the day in the red, ongoing investor fears about inflation and a possible recession grows as central banks tighten monetary policy. What do you think about Max Keiser's prediction for Bitcoin? Comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.